You're listening to In the Chair, a podcast for Freemasons in England, the UK and around the world. Find out more at masonicpodcast.com. But first, welcome your host, Robert Bone.
Hello there, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you're having a great day whenever and wherever you're listening to this. And once again, this is In the Chair, a podcast for Freemasons and people interested in Freemasonry, not only in England but around the UK and of course around the world. And we've been a bit international recently, and that trend's not going to be stopping again, because we have another international themed podcast with a guest, this time from the United States, which has been a really good interview, I think. And he's also not just a fellow Freemason, but is also a fellow podcaster. He's Juan Sepulveda from the Winding Stairs podcast that you might have heard of. So we'll get into that. Also, I just want to say, as some of you might be aware, I'm actually a professional magician. I work close up and also on stage. I do a whole mind reading show. And just to mention, if you're involved in organising a ladies' night, and actually not just ladies' nights, but any other sort of events, I'm actually going to be doing a special offer. You can find out about it. Go on to masonicpodcast.com/magic, the word magic. That will redirect you through to my website. And if you get in contact with me, either through the form on the website or emailing me or anything, just mention Masonic Podcast where it says about the quote bit, Masonic Podcast, and I'm actually doing a 15% discount. Of course, I don't know whereabouts in the country you're going to be when you sort of contact me, so travel charges might apply, but from the base sort of the packages that I do, I'm doing a special 15% discount for anyone that mentions Masonic Podcast. And that's not only for ladies' nights, but any other sort of events you might be interested in. And bit of close-up magic, mingling around, weddings, parties, all those sort of things. So I thought I'd mention that there. So to find out more about that, just go to masonicpodcast.com/magic, and that will redirect you through to my professional website. But anyway, I just wanted to sort of get that one out there now. Back on to today, and we're on to episode 22. So the show notes for what Juan and I are talking about is masonicpodcast.com/22. And you can find the links there. Now, Juan he joined Freemasonry in 2009. He's currently a member of Orange Blossom Lodge, number 80, which meets in Kissimmee in Florida. So I'm thinking at the UK at the moment, we're in the middle of January. Outside, it's all cold, wet, windy. I think we've got snow coming on. So just think to yourself about those warmer climes that Juan's in. And I'm sure, it'll take you away for a bit. And he runs the Winding Stairs podcast. The website for that is thewindingstairs.com, or just how you probably find In the Chair, go onto iTunes or Stitcher, search for The Winding Stairs, and it should be quite obvious. But all the links to everything for that are in the show notes. So without much further ado, please welcome to In the Chair, Juan Sepulveda from Orange Blossom Lodge over in the United States. So please welcome to In the Chair, Juan Sepulveda, who's a member of Orange Blossom Lodge, number 80, in Kissimmee, Florida, in the United States. So, Juan, many thanks for coming on In the Chair.
Brother Robert, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great. It's an absolute pleasure. And I'm really pleased to have a kindred spirit and a brother, not just in Freemasonry on today, but a brother in podcasting.
Yes, sir. It's very pleasing to see that we have a brother in the UK actually taking the initiative to spread the good word that we have in Freemasonry.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I know you're doing similar, and your podcast, in case people don't recognise your name, is the Winding Stairs.
Yes, sir.
And of course, you can find that by going on to iTunes and the usual outlets by typing in The Winding Stairs. That'll come up, or going on to your website, thewindingstairs.com.
Correct.
And of course, you've got all the Facebook groups and Twitter and everything. And of course, we'll cover all that in a bit and have all the links for that in the show notes. But actually, first of all, when did you start your podcast? When did you start The Winding Stairs?
I started the podcast back in 2012.
Okay, so it's quite a long-running one now.
Yes. I started in 2012. The first episode I started working on it towards the end of 2012,
Right.
and the first episode was in February of 2013.
Oh, okay. So it actually come out. So you're coming up on pretty much 3 years now.
Yes, sir.
And is it a month? It's a monthly one. Is it exactly monthly you do it?
I have, from the very beginning, I had an idea that I was going to have a weekly podcast.
Right.
But for my faithful listeners, they know that is absolutely not true. It never
Fair enough.
materialized.
I think you're up to, is it episode 34, 35, somewhere around that now,
Yes.
isn't it? Yeah.
So we're up to episode 34. So it's been, I focused on putting together the content, and as soon as it's well enough for me to put my signature in it of sorts,
Sure.
then I send them out. So
And you have different sort of obviously interviews and everything. And I know some people, especially UK listeners, have sometimes I only listen to In the Chair because, of course, I'm a UK-based podcaster, UK-based Freemason, and there's not that many podcasts out there, which is one of the reasons why I started. None in the UK, and I don't know if some people are aware that, of course, there's more on in iTunes. And considering how big Freemasonry is, there's not that many. There's only a handful of them out there, which is one of the scary things actually when you think about how much coverage podcasts have, how widely spread Freemasonry is across the globe, and how few there are. But how would you summarise the Winding Stairs to someone to give them the how you would say the elevator pitch on it?
Well, the Winding Stairs focuses on helping Masons and people interested in Masonry to learn more about the applied version of Masonry.
Okay.
I like the practicality of taking these lessons that are ageless and applying them to today's problems and becoming better in the process.
Yeah, because I guess that's one of the things with Freemasonry is there's loads of people join it and get lots from it because there are lessons to be learnt. But I guess that's, as you just said just then, it's applying those lessons.
Yes.
And I guess it's one of those things where it's quite easy to go along and go, right, yep, I've learnt these. I guess years ago when Freemasonry was getting written down, these were very valuable lessons, and they still are. But I guess they've got lost in things. So can you just give us a bit of an idea about what you mean by applying Freemasonry?
Yeah, perfect. When you think of Freemasonry from the outside, before you become a member of the fraternity, there's this mystery of what you'll find behind the veil. What is it that you're going to be given access to? And there's this mystery that's very enticing.
Sure.
And at least in the United States, once you join the fraternity, you have access now to this wealth of knowledge that spans multiple generations.
Yes.
And you might get consumed with memorizing and learning about it, but encouraging people to actually apply the lessons. I think that's where the good man really become better. Okay,
that's a good, because there's the phrase that it's a common phrase, as Freemasonry is making good men better. And I guess it's a very nice, catchy soundbite, and it does explain quite a bit of what we do. But I guess that's the thing: is are people actually taking those lessons from it? I know, obviously, going through the second, going from through the different degrees and English, British Crown Freemasonry, you have 3 degrees, and under the United Grand Lodge of England, to go from entered apprentice, fellow craft to master mason, and part of it is meant to be how you show. That you've demonstrate the knowledge that you've learnt. And I know that comes up in the ceremony. You say about proving the proof, but there's no actual proof of that apart from you've memorised some lines. I know recently I had a chap from Turkey on called Baras Erman, and he actually surprised me when he said, actually, before going through the different degrees, it takes about 2 years. You've got to have attended at least 50% of the meetings, and you've got to listen to various lectures, and you even need to write an essay before you can progress on to the next one. And I thought, crikey, I mean, sometimes in the UK, you just get someone in and you haven't got many ceremonies. They can go through the degrees pretty much within a year, which doesn't really demonstrate proof of knowledge, I guess.
Yep.
And you want to try to get people to work on those lessons that obviously crop up in there.
Absolutely. And one thing here in the United States, craft masonry is similar to the UK.
Right.
We do have 3 degrees.
Yes.
So we have the entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason degree. Now, as with many other things in life, sometimes you have minimum requirements that have to be met in order for you to advance from one thing to the other. However, people take, and this is unfortunate, that oftentimes people take the minimum requirements as the absolute requirements.
Right.
Therefore, there's no incentive to really go beyond the minimum. You satisfy the expectation, that's good enough. And when that bar is set too low for whichever reason, then you fear bringing all the average efforts down to that minimum common denominator.
Sure, that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, the minimum common denominator. Why should people push themselves harder to achieve more when they're not going to get as well? They will, but they won't see it. It's not a tangible benefit to pushing themselves more, of course. And I think that's what you're now trying to say, is actually there are benefits, and let those benefits, because it, of course, it makes you that better man. That makes you from good to being even better. So absolutely. Just because off the wall, what would be an example of maybe a lesson that you think some people don't always notice, but something that it might be staring them in the face, but something they could actually a Freemason could apply from some of the teachings of Freemasonry?
I'll give you my very personal example.
Please, yes.
Throughout my life and throughout my family history, there has been a struggle with the 24-inch gauge.
Okay.
Being able to elegantly apply the lessons of managing your time correctly. Now, it is very exciting once you are presented the working tools and you get to compare this system of organizing your life with what you've already carried all your life. Well, that's great. You saw it and you thought, wow, that's amazing. I love it. There's no point in moving forward and continuing to live a life that is chaotic, that is not organized, that is not purpose driven. After you've been given the lessons of the importance of the division of time. Yeah,
and I think some people take it literally. They think it's 8 hours, but it is not. But it is just. I've had people think that before, that you literally are splitting it down equally, and it's not. It is actually just make yourself aware that there's 24 hours in the day, and that you should be spending that time doing the things that you should be doing. I mean, it's basically saying don't procrastinate, seize the day, and get on with what you want to do, which is a really valuable life lesson. And I know people realise that, but do they actually apply that?
Yep. And seeing it also as not neglecting areas of your life. If you were to think of your life as a compartmentalized experience where you have a physical life, you have a spiritual life, and you have an emotional life, then if you think about it in that way, and you can divide it however you imagine, but you distribute your energy as equitably as possible within those aspects of your life.
Yes.
Because for example, I ebb and flow in my commitment with health and fitness.
Sure, I think we all do.
Right?
Yeah, and definitely can relate to that.
Especially we reach our peaks in weight and sloth as the year ends, and then we get really excited on the first of the year, try to establish new habits, right? But nevertheless, what would be the point in you devoting all your time to your business and all the rest of your time to other things? If you neglect your body, you're decreasing how much energy you have throughout the day. Your focus is dispersed. So if you wanted to be efficient in the time that you're spending it on your business, you can't be because you're tired and you're aching.
Sure.
But when you distribute your energy equally and you have time for yourself to live a healthier life, then the hours that you're spending with family are ones that are more focused, where you can be present with them and really enjoy your spending with them. So I think it's important for us to be mindful of that equitable distribution of time through the important aspects of our life.
I think, and again, taking that one as the example, again, another thing would be the when learning ritual, it's sometimes people say I haven't got time for it, and it's almost thinking, well, hang on, you've got time to sit and watch box sets on TV, you've got time to do all these other things that don't really move you as a person forward. And I think, that's partly, and I think that's one of the things that I take away from it. I actually found, or actually really had a massive impact on me, was in the second degree working tools. I had to learn those, but learn the extended version, which in ours goes on for a couple of pages. But it really, by not just focusing on the remembering the words, it made it easier when you actually learnt what the words meant, and suddenly it just opened the door up, and it had much more meaning. And by actually learning it and telling someone else, to be honest, it probably meant more to me as the teacher than the actual person who's just stood there hearing it, having no idea what's going on. And I think that's one of the things from one of the things from Freemasonry. Actually, you don't necessarily get the lessons when you're taught the lessons. You get the lessons when you're the person doing the teaching. And then you're the one who's actually analysing and saying, why are these words in here? What does this mean? Penny drops. And it's like, well, yeah, that's such a great way to apply.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and actually, I think you said as well, you're looking to do something, another sort of project, which takes some of these principles, but open it out so it's not just for Masons. That's a project you're working on in 2016. It's called the Gentleman's Brotherhood. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Juan, so actually give us a bit of an overview of that. That sounds quite an interesting thing.
It all started, I became interested in becoming a better person. I've always been interested in the idea of being introspective and finding where I'm lacking in something and where I need to make up for something. And by the same token, I've paid attention to society and culture, and also notice some things that are missing and some things that are available. And one thing that struck me as odd is how uncommon common courtesy has become. It's almost as we shouldn't address it as common anymore.
Yeah.
Courtesy
good point, actually.
Right? It's like it loses the privilege to be called common once it becomes so scarce.
Yes.
And the Gentleman's Brotherhood aims to help gentlemen, whether they are in Freemasonry or not. This is more of a personal project that I've started.
Okay.
But get them to be present in the moment and become more in tune with what being a gentleman is. The importance of treating people in a respectful manner.
Yeah.
In extending that brotherly love that we recognize in Freemasonry. It shouldn't be limited to just Freemasons. This is something that we should be able to regard our fellow human being as our brother.
Yeah. I guess taking the lessons of Freemasonry, because to be honest, not everyone wants to join Freemasonry. Some people might not fit some of the requirements, and I've known some people who literally tick every single box. They would make a fantastic Freemason, and it's just something where for some reason they don't want to commit to it. Maybe something in the back of their mind, which is annoying in a way. But I guess you're looking at a way to maybe I wouldn't say capture those people, but at least capture their interest and give them something that they might be lacking. And if it turns out that they find quite a few people in that community also are Freemasons, it might then sort of potentially open that door. But that's not your objectives for it.
Exactly. And if you think about it, we're in the prime of our life, per se.
Yes.
And we are still evolving. There are areas in our life that are still in need of attention. And there is nothing impeding us from, while we are learning these things and while we are acquiring the necessary knowledge to become fruitful members of society, that we can share that with our fellow men. So with the Gentleman's Brotherhood, I wanted to put together a resource, almost a hub, where gentlemen from around the world could go to and find men that have a similar way of thinking.
Yes.
They want to be more gentlemanly, that they want to be courteous, that they want to really give themselves the opportunity to become the best version possible of themselves.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely a commendable sort of thing. And I think there's definitely a call for that, because as you say, it's courtesy. Used to be called common courtesy, but now it's the common really should be dropped from it. But I think there's lots of people that feel maybe they're not conscious of it, but they feel as though they want to go back to. They might even consider it old-fashioned, but they feel as though that's the way should be.
Yes.
Obviously, you're in the process as of the time of recording this during the beginning of January 2016. You said it's all still work in progress. Are there any ways that people could follow that? So once the project starts coming together, they can find out more.
Well, I've already started the project. There are articles available to be read. The very first podcast episode, which is the pilot episode, is already available. So you could go to thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com and take a look at all of that. And I've made it convenient enough because there will be a membership portion of it,
right,
where the members of the Brotherhood will have access to extended courses, extended workbooks, and different things that they can take to in their journey to becoming the best version of themselves. And they can get a hold of the email list.
Right.
So you just go to the Gentleman's Brotherhood and sign up, and as soon as those other programs continue to roll out, I'll communicate them.
They'll get them. So so for the time being, they can go onto the gentleman'sbrotherhood.com, sign up onto the bits there, and then of course as that project all starts coming, they can start getting the updates on that. So that's actually quite a good little way, and it's it's almost like a Freemasonry spin-off in a way, that you're taking some of those things, and of course some people nowadays, especially with the religious aspect, some people think that Freemasonry is more religious, some people don't think it is, and there's all those there's so many different things, and of course although Freemason pretty much is encompassing, there are still certain restrictions. So it's good that you sort of people don't have to miss out on maybe some of the teachings of Freemasonry, although it won't actually be obviously the lessons sort of being learnt from Freemasonry. So actually what we'll do, if it's okay, Juan, is to find out a little bit more about you as well. Sure. Often I sometimes do those I referred to them when I started the podcast as quick fire questions, and I thought it was one of those things that I just blast through in a couple of minutes, and it ended up being sometimes ended up being some of the more interesting questions, because then people actually started answering, and then we've started finding out more about people. I
like that.
So and it's one of the things, I know the listeners actually quite like it, because I know with obviously my podcast and also your podcast, it's people talking to people, and that's what people enjoy, the listeners enjoy. So I thought we'll have go through that a little bit, and you can give a little bit more about your background on that as well. So the first question I ask is obviously, I'd normally say about why did you join Freemasonry, but I'll just quickly say that the lodge that you're a member of now isn't your mother lodge, is it?
That's true.
Yeah, because you said you're a member of Orange Blossom Lodge in Florida, but yes. You joined you initially joined another lodge, wasn't it? Whereabouts was that one actually?
Well, and this comes to prove the importance of our internet presence as an organization. The initial lodge where I became an entered apprentice is Eola Lodge number 207 in Orlando, Florida.
Right.
It happens to be about an hour away, driving distance from my house.
Okay.
And I joined soon after I started growing my family, so it became increasingly more difficult to attend lodge meetings and spend quality time in the leadership of Eola Lodge. And there always was a lodge within 10 to 15 minutes of my home.
Right.
But when I was searching for a lodge, I became more attracted to the website that Eola had, and I reached out to them. Right.
So that's sort of going back on some of the other episodes that I've had when people have been talking about the internet and the web presence. Never really quite. I mean, we'd been thinking about it as in to attract, but never actually thought about it. That people might be looking at. You're thinking, right, want to make sure you're the top of Google, but also want to make sure it's attractive to new candidates, and for someone to actually choose one lodge over another that might be further away due to the website. It's quite an interesting something to take into account.
Yeah, and partly it had to do with the availability of pictures of what happened. For example, they had a lot of pictures of their events, and you could see the people there. You could see their families and all of that, and that attracted me. So, and they responded rather quickly once I reached out to them. So I didn't even have a chance to say, well, let me check this other lodge out.
Right.
And like they say, beggars can be choosers. I had nobody to vouch for me to join Freemasonry. Sure. And this lodge paid attention. And
when was that? And what year?
2009.
2009. So you've been in Freemasonry, well, coming up on 7 years now. So, okay. So I just thought I'd cover that bit because I know obviously you'd sort of changed different lodges. So, that really brings us up to the first. It's meant to be the quick fire questions, and it was 5 minutes ago that I brought the subject up and haven't asked the first one yet. It's just this is just the way it goes. Obviously, first one is, well, why did you join Freemasonry?
I first became interested in Freemasonry before I was of age.
Right.
I have an uncle who I recognized through hearing conversations of the other adults that he was a Mason, and I wanted to know what it was.
Right.
So it piqued my interest back when I was maybe 16 or 17.
Okay.
And this was a gentleman that I really admired. I really admired the way that he behaved himself, the leadership that he exuded, even within the family. That's something that really attracted me.
Right.
And I wanted to know if Freemasonry had something to do with it. Many years went by, and I inquired about Freemasonry several times. But the more I learned about Masonry and about the values that it held, they really paralleled a lot of my interests.
Right.
The interest of self-actualization, of introspection, all of those things were things that I was already interested in.
Yes.
And despite all the negative information or wrong information that I had access to throughout the internet, there were a lot of things that really connected with me.
Right.
So having nobody in Freemasonry within close access to me here, because my uncle doesn't live in the U.S., then I just reached out to the lodge directly and started my journey that way.
And it was one of those things where you kind of felt, well, yeah, you kind of had those sort of I guess the same agenda, and you could sort of go along, let's see the website, and of course it fulfilled it. So you, in a way, almost answer the next question, which is, once you join Freemasonry, and I think this is an important question to touch on for retention, because to be honest, although you can look at things on the internet, you can talk to different people from lodge, even meet up with members of the lodge, discuss things with them, it's not until you're actually a member that you really find out what it's about. And I think it's important not just to get members to join, but to get them to stay. So why did you continue your membership?
I continued my membership because I found things in Masonry that I was looking for. And even though there were things that were not readily available, I knew that they were part of Masonry.
Right.
And for example, I really like discourse. I like engaging in conversations. I like the idea of having a dialogue with people, and also tackling difficult subjects. That's something that is important to me. There's no way for us to grow unless we put ourselves in a situation that allows us to challenge preconceived notions,
right,
and witness new ones. So one thing that I expected out of the local lodges was vivid discussions of morality and virtues and philosophy, and I didn't find it.
No,
but I knew that it was part of Masonry.
Yeah, actually, I think that's one of the lessons that is in there for you to find yourself, isn't it? Especially the third degree. It's it's very apparent in the third degree, but no one actually points it out directly and says, "Here's the bit you need to pay attention to." I mean, if you miss it, then you must be not looking for it. But those are definitely lessons in there. So you found them and thought this ticks the boxes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I wanted to have those conversations, and I knew there were other Masons just like me that perhaps were going to lodges and only engaging in the business side of the lodge, the reading of the minutes, the budgets, bills, all that kind of stuff. But I knew that there was this need for brothers to really engage in these deep conversations.
Yeah. So that's a great way to sort of look at things and to do that. So of course you joined Freemasonry, and you had those sort of experiences. But do you have one single experience that will always stick with you? Now, it might be something that actually happened within the lodge. It might be something that's happened outside, or just a general feeling. But is there any sort of memorable experience you may have? It's a bit of a tricky one.
Yeah, no, It's a good one.
Cheers.
There have been. Well, I'll tell you this. After starting my podcast, which at first I thought, well, maybe a few people from my lodge would listen to, and it has evolved to where now people from over 120 different countries listen to it.
Brilliant.
That blows my mind. But the thing that you hear about the brotherhood, and that you'll meet people from different places and they will be your brothers, and they'll help you if you need help, and they'll encourage you when you're down. Well, I thought this sounds pretty and everything, but is it really like that? Well, a memorable experience would be one time I went with my best friend, who happens to be a Mason as well. We traveled up to another state to visit a lodge in which I was to speak. Okay. So I was giving a presentation. These people, nobody knew me in there, but they treated me as if I was a blood brother. Right. Inclusively, there was a brother, Brother Mackey, and I hope that he listens to this. He really showed us with his hospitality. He showed us the brotherly love that we mythically heard about for times. He spent his entire day taking us through sightseeing. He took us to his favorite restaurant, and we spent so much time together that this brother now is close to our heart as one that sits in lodge with us.
Right. And I experienced that as well as on the podcast. It's great. I mean, I can speak to yourself, I can speak to, other people in other countries. And it's one of those weird things where if I was to have an interview with other people about other subjects, it would be really sort of like stilted, I think. But you suddenly sort of mention someone who's, especially like, the chap from Turkey, Barris, he's not even talking in his first language, yet we can still have, it's one of those things that once the conversation starts about Freemasonry, and I found this no matter what the subject is, no matter where in the world is we're talking about things, the conversation just starts. And I've never once felt in over 20 episodes that I've been having to push someone. And I think that's quite obvious, from it. And I think you probably find that on your show as well, and just out and about. There's something about Freemasons that genuinely does connect, but you don't realise it if you're just going to your same regular lodge, you're not out visiting, and you're not connecting with people outside of that immediate circle. Exactly. Perhaps that larger brotherhood can be lost on people. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
I think it's, and that's sort of tells people, again, going back to lessons to apply from Freemasonry is, go out there and communicate with people.
And travel. Here we say travel. There's it's great. It's very important to travel. But one thing that I've come to learn, especially as the responsibilities in my family have become more pressing, that traveling is not limited to your physical travel. It's not necessarily you just getting in a car and traveling for hours to a lodge. I have connected with brothers from the United States and pretty much all the states, brothers from the UK, brothers from Australia, and we're having a proxy experience for traveling.
Sure.
And we have a lot to learn from one another.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
we shouldn't squander this.
Yeah, I know listeners really like these sort of interviews where I am talking to people outside from other countries, other Grand Lodges, and I know we could spend our time, and we could probably spend an hour or two talking about all these little technical subtleties that are different, but at the same time, people like finding out, they do it just like we do, and I think there's that sort of connection. Do you have any advice for anyone who may be thinking of joining Freemasonry? I know lots of listeners in the chair are people looking to find out more about Freemasonry and considering, and it's one of those things that has cropped up on their internet search. I'm sure the same happens with your podcast. People find it, listen to it. So any of the listeners who haven't joined Freemasonry, or maybe are listeners who have a friend who might be considering joining, advice they could give to them?
One of the most important things in my mind is to pace yourself.
Yes.
And that goes hand in hand with the applicable nature of the lessons of Masonry. You want to have take the time to learn. When your conversation with the brother from Turkey, I was listening that he was talking about the fact that for the Lewis who gets the opportunity to, for those who are listening who might not know what a Lewis is someone whose father is or a close relative. But
Yes.
I know here in the States it's a father. His father is a Mason. Therefore, if the age requirement is 21, then when you're 18 you can join. He could have joined. Oh, he actually joined, right? If I'm not mistaken,
Yes.
at 18, but
Yes.
had to wait until he was 21 to pass to the fellowcraft degree.
Yes, which normally happens in a couple of months in a UK lodge.
Right?
Yeah.
So now imagine if you were to take, let's just say maybe not 2 years, but if you were to take 6 months between one degree and the other, and spend those 6 months learning the ritual, learning the nuances of the lessons that are veiled within our ritual, and taking the time to really be introspective and applying them to yourself.
Yes.
So if I could tell anything to that one man who's listening, who's interested in Masonry, if given the opportunity to come within our doors, you owe it to yourself to give yourself the chance to become that perfect ashlar at the end of your journey by really divesting yourself of all the superfluities of life.
Yeah. One of my, and I was chatting to this about one of the brethren in my lodge actually the other day, and was saying about, obviously rushing through things. And I said, yes, you can rush through and go to Master Mason pretty quick, and you can go through the offices and be master pretty quick. However, often I find you spend 1 year learning a ritual, the next year going, oh, that's what it meant. Because you're too busy trying to learn. It's not until afterwards. The other thing as well is I find, and obviously different ritual and different, grand lodges are going to be different. But by learning some of the bits that you learn for deacon and learning some of the bits that you're learning as wardens, what it actually means when you get to worshipful master, you suddenly realise that actually you know quite a bit of the chunk of things that you need to do, purely because the deacon's work and warden's work had been repeating what the master had said. So in actual fact, you already know that because you were given the instructions, and those can work as stepping stones. So when you're learning all the other bits, you can kind of go, well, actually, these chunks here I had done a couple of years ago. And if you try to rush through those other bits too quickly, you're not really absorbing it enough. You're absorbing it enough to get the words out on the night, not to really stick in for the long term. And that means by the time you get to the chair and you're in the east, you're the master of the lodge, you kind of skipped over quite a few bits. It makes work a lot tougher. And to be honest, and this is one of the big factors as well, is quite a lot of people joining Freemasonry, especially those who listen to the podcast, are in their, I'd say, 20s, early 30s. I think that's a great time to join. And you can get in, especially in the UK lodge, into the chair in around about 7 years. To be honest, a Masonic career could take you up to your 70s, 80s. So you've got actually maybe potentially 30, 40, maybe even 50 years ahead of you. Why are you going to try to cram all those 50 years into the first 5 or 6 and then spend the next 40 sitting around being quite bored because you got it all out the way? And I think that would be maybe expanding from, your point of view. That's a lesson I'd say to people as to why not to rush, because you've got plenty of time to do it and you don't want to be trying to tackle all of that whilst you might have other commitments on in life as well. And I think that's why when people retire and they've gone through everything, then they can start looking at all those other side orders and all those other degrees when time is much more of a luxury, not so much of a luxury for them. It's something they've got more of. So just to expand on that. Sorry to about you struck a chord with me then, and it just completely reminded me of this lesson that I was trying to give someone the other day. So, and I think if one or two people find that, then sometimes it needs to be told to other people, and it's not until they realise that it makes sense.
That's perfect. And I want to draw a parallel with that, going back to that renewed sense of commitment to habits and rituals of your personal life when the year begins. If you try to change too drastically on that 1st of January, how likely are you to keep that change for many months or years thereafter? The chances are very small. What's advised is that if you're in the process of establishing new habits, that you have many habits that you adopt, slight adjustments to you, so that you can change and it becomes a lifestyle as opposed to a shocking change.
Yeah.
Same thing with Masonry. If you were to try to cram all the lessons of the craft degrees and then rush into the Scottish Rite degree and take all these degrees, how efficiently do you think you can sustain the application of those lessons in the long term?
Yeah, and it's not going to stick. It's going to get you through at the time, and it's not going to stick. And yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That's a great way to put it. And I think that is a fantastic bit of advice. When obviously, my next question was going to be what advice for a Master Mason, but I think we've covered that. Anyone looking to go in and going through the offices, and I think it's important. And so many people have said this to me, but it's one of those things that it's more of a whisper, not actually ever said, is to make sure that if people are trying to push you and you don't feel ready, just say, no, I just want another year. I don't want to. I mean, what I would say, though, is don't take it so far that, and I've known people that have joined Freemasonry, said, I don't want to do anything, I'm not quite ready yet. And then after about 3 or 4 years, had literally become a Master Mason, but had done nothing else. And then the boredom sets in because then they're not doing anything. And then it starts getting to, it's too much of a big jump then. They build up that psychological barrier. So I think there is treading that sort of fine line. There's no, you can make sure you get involved a little bit, but don't get pushed beyond what you feel, you want to do, or to do things quickly, because sometimes some lodges, and I feel this, they try to rush things through because maybe they haven't got many candidates and they don't want to do demonstrations. So they want to try to do real ceremonies. But all that ends up happening is you push one candidate through too quickly, and all those other spaces, you still have to have the demonstrations because you haven't got another candidate to replace them. And all that ends up happening is the other one ends up leaving because they felt too much pressure on them. Yeah. And I think, maybe not so much from a Master Mason, but sometimes those, the senior officers in the lodge need to put themselves in the shoe of that Master Mason, going through the offices.
And how unfortunate would it be if you have a man that sits in your lodge and just because you put pressure on him, the potential that he has of being an influential component of the lodge dissipates just because you pressure too hard. So there's a word of caution there for both the leadership and the members of the fraternity. As a leader, just know how much you're demanding of your people, and vice versa. The member of the fraternity needs to know that the answer can't always be yes. Like something's gonna suffer by it. And
I think that's it. Yeah, a Master Mason, because sometimes no, just because someone's senior, don't be afraid to say no. Actually, that reminds me of a statistic. I went to a talk with someone called the Right Worshipful Ray Reid a few months back. He was doing a talk about some statistics that have been gathered from a survey done by the United Grand Lodge of England. And talking of people trying to pressurise people, when looking at drop-off rates of people who had resigned after, within a couple of years of joining, there was more resignations from people that had been introduced to it by a friend than people who had found Freemasonry through the internet and done it themselves. And the conclusion was, because there's pressure from members of lodges to try to bring people in, basically people were giving their friends and family a bit of a hard sell just to try to get them into Freemasonry. And of course, they weren't maybe completely up for it. And then they started getting pushed through the offices. Whereas the person that, like you, had done I feel so this is something I should find out more about, find out more. Yeah, this is what I want to do. Then join it. Yeah, this is how I expected. There's even more lessons to it. And then going through at their own pace. I mean, those are the people that were staying. And and it's all that sort of like trying to pressurise people into it again is I think some of the lessons that maybe older Masons need to look at and go, don't just pressurise people into Freemasonry and don't try to pressurise them through the ranks when they join. Let people find it and go through it at their own pace and let them discover those lessons themselves.
Exactly. No, that's right on the money.
Well, Juan, I think we've been chatting a while now. We've covered so much. One of the things that I wanted to cover, and I know I said earlier was a little bit more about the differences between the UK and American Freemasonry. I know that obviously there's quite a few things in common, but like everything, there's something it's quite a few differences, and we've covered almost like every subject but that. So it'd be great if maybe in the future you can come back on again, and we could actually maybe look a little bit more. I think we've covered so much of the theory side of things. It would be good to look a bit more on some of the practical differences as well, if that'd be okay.
It would be my honor.
So it'd be great. I don't want to try. I know sometimes some people do come back on, and actually, I've come up with a list of questions because when I first joined Freemasonry, I got a book called The Dummy's Guide to Freemasonry, and to be honest, it was a great way to learn about Freemasonry, and it probably taught me a lot more, at least to get things going. And I recommend anyone listening to this who is joining Freemasonry to get it. But it was written by an American author from an American perspective, so I know that there are some differences. So it'd be great to chat about those. But I'm going to let you get going now. I'm hoping the listeners have really taken something away from that. Obviously, everything's going to be in the show notes. They can go to the show notes by masonicpodcast.com. But just to recap, Juan's podcast is called The Winding Stairs. Search for The Winding Stairs on iTunes and Stitcher, or just go on to thewindingstairs.com. And of course, thegentleman'sbrotherhood.com. Pop onto there, want to register some interest. So, Juan, many thanks for coming on. I really do appreciate your time today.
Robert, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Great, and hopefully we'll catch up with you again soon. So, all the listeners to In the Chair, please give your thanks to Juan Sepulveda for taking the time out and speaking to us. My thanks again to Juan Sepulveda from the Winding Stairs Masonic podcast for taking so much time out. As you can tell, I don't think we really covered some of the items that we were planning on covering and talking about the differences. That conversation took, and it made me laugh. I set up those, the quick questions, and pretty much spent half the podcast talking about these quick questions. And I think, the philosophy that Juan's brought to Freemasonry when he joined it, and realising that maybe not everyone is interested in Freemasonry and joining Freemasonry, there might be certain aspects that maybe put them off for the time being. But the lessons that are learnt in Freemasonry that should be applied not just by Freemasons but to open it out, and I think that's quite a good way that he's looking at that. And it wouldn't surprise me if that ends on bringing more people into Freemasonry, just when people start realising what is also going on and what it's about. We like to say we're making good men better, but we're not really saying how. And I think it's quite true. There are many people that do join Freemasonry and they go through and they learn the words and they turn up, but maybe they're not always learning those lessons and applying those lessons, which they really could those, how should we say that in nowadays it's the self-improvement. And I think Freemasonry is all those hundreds of years of self-improvement, and sometimes we're not really learning those lessons or really acknowledging those lessons. So I think well done to Juan, and check it out. It's thewindingstairs.com, and of course all the links for that in the show notes. That's masonicpodcast.com/22, because this is of course episode 22. And also remember, I'm doing that special offer as well, and that's going to be applying. So to find out about ladies' nights and weddings and parties, anything like that, it's masonicpodcast.com/magic. That will put you through onto my website, and just remember to quote Masonic Podcast. So until next week, have a great time. Many thanks for listening, and I'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you for listening to In the Chair. Visit masonicpodcast.com to see the show notes and in-the-chair.co.uk for more resources to help you get the most out of your Masonic journey. If you enjoyed the show, please let us know by rating and reviewing it on iTunes. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss our next podcast. If you're not already, follow us on Twitter at Masonic Podcast.